Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're totally bypassing the noisy internet gurus to reveal how building real wealth is actually a beautifully simple three-part system. Look, if you spend any amount of time trying to figure out how to invest, you've probably felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of conflicting advice out there. It's like a giant puzzle, right? But today, we are stripping all of that away. We're going to look at a super clean, highly effective 3 ETF portfolio that acts as a fully automated engine for your long-term wealth.
So it's a question we all ask when we first start out. Is investing really that complicated? Because, one person is telling you to own 25 different ETFs, another is insisting you sell covered calls, and a third is throwing 3 hot stock tips at you every single week. It's exhausting. But here is the honest truth. You do not need complex trading strategies, and you definitely don't need a massive watch list to reach financial independence. The real answer to which complicated strategy you should pick is simply none of them.
Okay, let's just dive straight into the blueprint. We've got 5 steps today. 1, the power of compounding. 2, meeting the 3 core funds. 3, choosing your asset allocation. 4, the golden rule of investing. And 5, a little bonus on short-term cash options.
All right, section 1, the power of compounding and the actual math behind it.
To really understand why setting this simple system up correctly is absolutely critical, let's just imagine you invest $750 a month for 30 years. The result? A staggeringly large number. We are talking $1.6 million. Historically speaking, just a few extra percentage points in your returns can quietly compound into this massive amount over a few decades. It's literally like magic, but it's just math.
This completely illustrates the difference. An old-school 7% return lands you around $850,000. And hey, that is still incredible. Honestly, it's way more than most Americans retire with. But shifting that exact same money into a portfolio averaging closer to 10.5%, that nearly doubles your wealth to that $1.6 million mark. Same monthly deposit, 0 extra effort, almost double the whole shebang. That right there is the quiet power of compounding.
Moving on to section 2. Meet the 3 core funds. This is basically your parts list.
So, let's see how this builds, starting with the 3 distinct roles your funds need to play. First up is your engine. This is your core ETF, and frankly, it's the absolute most important piece of the puzzle. For a lot of people, this could honestly be the only fund they ever own. This engine should make up at least 60% of your portfolio, and it gives you that broad market exposure that continuously drives your long-term growth.
You really have 2 absolute heavy hitters to choose from here. Both with tiny expense ratios, we're talking around 0.03%. You have VTI, which represents the total U.S. stock market, holding over 3,000 businesses, including smaller companies that might just grow into the next giants. Or, on the flip side, you have VO, which tracks the top 500 largest U.S. companies, the S&P 500. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is you only pick one. Seriously, do not own both. They overlap so heavily that owning both just means you're holding 2 nearly identical funds. Pick your engine and just let it run.
Next, we add the amplifier. This is a growth ETF designed to take up maybe 10 to 20% of your portfolio. Its sole job is to potentially outperform your core over long stretches. But notice I said potentially. Higher returns always come with higher risk, meaning a lot more volatility and way deeper drops. And that's exactly why this is just an amplifier, not your foundation.
What's really interesting is the contrast and how you can actually amplify. You can go highly concentrated in tech, AI, and semiconductors with a fund like QQQM, which tracks the NASDAQ 100. It's had some pretty eye-watering returns, but remember the dot-com bubble burst? Yeah, the NASDAQ fell over 70% back then. Concentration totally cuts both ways. Alternatively, you could choose a slightly broader, more cushioned approach with something like Vanguard's VUG. It's still super tech-heavy, but a third of it is spread out across other sectors. But even then, VUG dropped around 33% in 2022. The lesson here, growth lifts your portfolio for sure, but you must be able to stomach those wild swings.
Finally, we have the stabilizer. This third ETF is here not to maximize your returns, but really to act as a shock absorber. Its entire job is to smooth out the ride so you don't panic and sell everything when the markets get really ugly. Because honestly, if you panic and sell, none of the math we just talked about even matters.
Now, traditionally, people use bonds for stability. And hey, bonds are great if you're within, say, 5 years of retirement. But for long-term builders, you can actually use a stock fund like VIG. It targets dividend aristocrats and kings. We're talking massive companies like Microsoft, Visa, Costco, and Johnson & Johnson that have super long histories of consistently raising their dividends. That filter naturally selects incredibly financially disciplined businesses. Now, it's still a stock fund, so it can definitely still fall, but historically it holds up way better than aggressive growth funds. Plus, those dividends keep paying out during a downturn, so you can just keep reinvesting them.
All right, moving into Section 3, choosing your asset allocation. Time to pick your split.
So now that we have our engine, our amplifier, and our stabilizer, let's look at 3 totally different ways to assemble them. Option 1 is the balanced allocation. It's incredibly clean and super simple to manage. You'd put roughly 70% into your core engine, 20% in your growth amplifier, and 10% into your quality stabilizer. This basically gives you broad market exposure, a really nice tilt toward growth, and just enough stability to smooth things out along the way.
Option 2 is the global allocation. This introduces an international slice for diversification totally beyond the US market. Here, you'd allocate about 55% to your VTI core, carve out 15% for an international fund like VXUS, and then just spread the remaining 30% perfectly evenly, 15% to your growth amplifier and 15% to your quality stabilizer. Look, even though the US has massively outperformed for decades, literally nobody knows what the next 20 years look like. So this just adds a really nice layer of global protection.
Option 3 is the aggressive allocation. This one is generally meant for younger investors, maybe in your 20s or 30s, who are actively chasing upside and can truly handle major volatility. You start with 60% in your core, 20% in growth, 10% in quality, and then an optional, kind of controversial, 10% allocation to a highly volatile asset like Bitcoin. The absolute key here is really knowing your own risk tolerance before ever selecting this model.
Section 4. The golden rule of investing. Consistency is absolutely key. Okay, whichever model you actually choose to build, there is one absolute rule, and if you break it, the entire system just falls apart. Every single one of these funds is going to experience massive drops. I'm talking 20, 30, maybe even 40% or more. You literally cannot capture that long-term compounding magic without surviving brutal stretches, like the 2008 Great Recession, the 2020 pandemic crash, and the 2022 tech sell-off. You just can't have the up years without living through the down years. You simply have to keep investing no matter what the market is doing. You've got to remember this fundamental truth. When the market falls, that is precisely when your steady, automated contributions are buying the most shares at the absolute lowest prices. So, the crucial takeaway here is that you must view these inevitable market drops not as disastrous to run away from, but as incredible opportunities to basically buy shares on clearance. Long-term consistency through the chaos, well, that's exactly what compounds into real wealth.
Section 5, our bonus round, short-term cash options and exactly where to park it. To perfectly cap off this whole financial system, we need a sort of glove box for money you might actually need in the near future, say the next 2 to 3 years for a house down payment or a new car. People ask about this constantly. Now, while a standard high-yield savings account is perfectly fine, it's liquid, it's simple, you can actually make your cash work a little bit harder using a short-term treasury ETF like SGOV. It essentially holds 0 to 3 months treasuries, pays a really competitive yield, and the best part is you can sell at any time without having to manually buy and roll treasuries yourself. It's just a fantastic spot for your short-term money, freeing up your long-term engine to just keep running uninterrupted.
Before we wrap up today, please remember that everyone's financial situation is entirely unique. This explainer is strictly for educational purposes to help you learn and understand these concepts. It should absolutely not be taken as formal financial advice. Always do your own research or talk to a qualified professional.
So we've covered the engine, the amplifier, the stabilizer, and even the cash glove box. Take a look at your own accounts today and ask yourself honestly, is your money set up as a powerful, set it and forget it engine for your future? Or is it just sitting there parked in the driveway? Think about that for a second. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you next time.